Hello, welcome to Section 5, Important Topics of Object-Oriented Programming. Let's see what we are going to cover in this section. In this section, we will talk about exceptions, how to handle exceptions in software development, why it is so important. We will talk about events and delegates. We will learn how to use them. And then we will talk about generics in C#, why these are so important in software development, how we can implement them, and what are the benefits. Exception handling. In this video, we will talk about exception in C#, how we can handle an exception, the important keywords of exception handling. We will also write an example code where we will handle an exception. Now let's go through the theory of exception handling. So what is an exception? An exception is any unexpected situation or behavior that occurs while the software is running. Those errors that occur on compile time doesn't fall under this category. In easy words, we can say an error on the runtime is called an exception. Now let's see what is exception handling. Exceptions are unexpected situations, but a programmer can put some precautions about it, as some situations can be guessed while writing the code. Taking that precaution is called exception handling. When an exception is handled, the program doesn't stop when it gets an exception, but it moves forward. Different kinds of exception examples could be dividing any number by 0, referencing a null object, casting improper type, input-output errors, or even out of memory. Now let's talk about the important keywords. First, let's talk about the try block. This block of code is which has a possibility of throwing an exception are kept in this try block. It's like trying some code. If it works, it's fine. If it doesn't work, if it throws an exception, we have another plan to handle it. And then comes the catch block. This block is when a try block throws an exception, this block will handle it. This block will receive that exception and do whatever code you have written inside it. It's kind of like a backup action. Then finally keyword. This block is positioned after the catch block. This block of code will be executed whether any exception is thrown or not. Then comes the throw keyword. Using this keyword, a programmer can throw exceptions manually. This keyword is very handy when a programmer wants to pass an exception to another catch block and maybe handle it differently. This gives the programmer the power to throw a custom exception. Now let's jump into the IDE and write some code. So here I have created a project and I have my main method here. I have written some code here. So let me explain it what is happening. So I have taken two integer type numbers. One is number 1 and one is number 2. Then I have taken three different integer type variables. One is result, which is assigned 0. Another is result 1, which is assigned this number 2 multiplied by 2. So actually the result would be 10. Then another variable called result 2 is number 1 minus result 1, which is actually storing number value is 0. So after we assign these variables, what I am doing here is I have written a try block. And in this try block, I have written a code which is result equals number 1 divided by result 2. And this is just an example to illustrate. But in a real life situation, there could be some situations where you may have to divide some number and you don't know what will be the exact number on that situations. Because maybe you will be getting some data after some processes. So when you are not sure about what will be the result to data or any other data, you can put inside the try block. So here we are sure that this number is 0, so it will throw an exception. So after the try block, what we have written is the catch block, and this is taking an exception as parameter. And in catch block, we will console write line the exception message, and we will set the result equals to 2. After that, we have written a finally block, and this finally block, what is doing is resetting the numbers to 0 and printing this message as reset values done. And after all these blocks, we have a console write line where we print the result. So now let's run this application and see what happens. So here we can see that we were trying to divide by a 0 and we get an exception, and the message is attempted to divide by 0. So this is coming from the catch block. Then these reset values are done. This is coming from the finally block. And this is the statement which is run after the blocks were finished. As this exception was handled by the try and catch block, our program was still running. Otherwise, if we didn't have this, our program would have stopped. Now let's see what we have in this commented code. So here in this code, what we are doing is we are putting an if block and checking if the result 2 is equals to 0 or not. If the result 2 is 0, we are throwing a new exception with this message. And here we have written custom message, why you give such number. This is just for illustration. So now if we do it, let's see what happens. So here we can see that we are getting the string we have customly created as exception message. So it means when the result 2 is 0, this is throwing this exception, which is caught by this catch block, and then it goes like normal. So this is all the important factors of exception handling. You put these codes into try block when you are not sure whether they can throw exceptions or not.